Welcome to the Wholesaling Inc. podcast, America's #1 podcast for new real estate investors, where we know that finding discounted properties is the most proven path to financial freedom. I am your host, Brent Daniels, Mr. TTP, Mr. Talk to People, and I am telling you this, if I can do it, so can you. So let's get started. Let's get started with one word, and that word is probate. Probate. It's such a foreign word. It feels very mysterious. It feels like I kind of understand what it is, but I don't really understand what it is. So to cut through all of the mystery of understanding what probate is, I brought in somebody that is the master at probates, an actual probate attorney, and that is Al Nicoletti. Al, how are you?
Brent Daniels, thank you so much for having me. I'm great. I mean, just got off the plane. I mean, I love your energy. I love seeing you for the first time.
Yep.
So I'm ready to dive in on all things probate, on how we can help your whole audience and all your students figure out how to solve these things.
Yes, and this is huge. So somebody buys a house,
Right.
Okay?
Right.
They've owned this property for a long time, right? They pass away. They didn't put together, like, what happens now? Does every property go into probate? Do only some? Is there a fraction amount? Like, what is probate?
So let's start at the basics,
Yeah.
right? So the what is somebody owned real estate. And we'll start with real estate because we could get into so many other things with bank accounts and cars, but sticking to real estate,
Yes.
they owned it in their name. And when they own it in their name with no magic language on the title, on the deed,
Okay.
and they die, and there's heirs, there's going to be some kind of heir down the line, whether it's spouse, children, or maybe there's a will saying who gets it.
Yeah.
In order to properly transfer the interest, they need probate, which is the paperwork in the courthouse moving the asset and the title over to who the heirs are, so that now that they've moved it over, they can sell it, they can refinance it, they can convey it, they can do whatever they want with it after probate's done. So simply moving what the deceased had, the title of what they had, over to the true heirs.
All right, so if I own a piece of property, I need an agreement. I need paperwork if I want to sell it. If I want to take my name off of the title and sell it to somebody else, right?
Right.
And if I don't sell it, if I don't have that paperwork on a normal sale, and I just pass away for whatever reason, I need to have, as you call, magic language on that property that says, in the event that I pass away, this is what happens with this property, right?
Right.
And that's typically a will.
Well, it could be a will. So
Okay.
in Florida, wills do not avoid probate.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't know that. They think, okay, now we have a will.
Is this other states?
Some states you can avoid it.
Okay.
But, I stay in that Florida realm.
Right.
But, you have other states like Texas where you can avoid probate altogether through an affidavit if you have like all the heirs. But that's a whole other thing.
Okay.
So there's crazy stuff,
Yeah.
right? So the magic language part is on the deed. So if you retitle the deed as Brent and John and you title it as like joint tenants with rights of
Right.
survivorship, or maybe you do a ladybird deed where you retitle it, leaving it for your life with a remainder to somebody else.
Okay.
Those are the things that are the magic language that would avoid having to go through that whole thing.
Okay.
Right. So a lot of investors, what they'll do is they'll pull the title or they'll pull a deed and say, I got a lead from a seller and I pulled the deed and it says this language, do we have to go through probate? Do they need to go through probate? And it all depends on that magic language. And that's key.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people will just do their own deeds, or title companies, and they're not even thinking about it because they're just doing a transaction. They'll put multiple people on the title. So you won't just have one, you'll have 6.
Right.
So 5 of them die. Now you're dealing with 5 probates and maybe more, depending on how many other people die after.
And how does somebody, if somebody passes away and there's not very clear language on who's going to inherit this property, who's going to get the ownership from the heirs, within the heirs,
Right.
Who gets it? Who gets the house?
Right.
And who should we be talking to? So listen, this is Wholesaling Inc., right? We go after these properties. A lot of times, I mean, even you talking about probates is like, oh my gosh, this is a lot. This is like distress. Like somebody has to go through this after losing a loved one or whatever else. Like this is when we talk about going after property owners that are in distress, there's really three main forms, right? There's the condition of the property that's just a physical distress. There's a financial distress of the property of people that can't afford it. And then there's like an emotional distress,
right?
Where, probates kind of fit into all three categories.
Correct.
But for the most one, there's a lot in my experience with doing a lot of these probate deals, it's a lot that has to deal with the emotional distress of that, of the heirs.
Right.
Right? And who's getting the property? What's the responsibility? Who's paying the bills?
Yeah.
Who's keeping the utilities on? Who's paying insurance? Who's paying property taxes?
Yeah,
right?
Right. Exactly. There's so many things in those three categories, right? So many times a distressed property, the heirs could be sitting on that property and having paid the taxes for 20, 30 years, but mom, dad, brother, sister, they died many years ago. So maybe the emotional part is out and now it becomes a financial play because they're tired of paying those property taxes and they think that they're going to get the reimbursement necessarily for all of that payment, and maybe not.
Sure.
So really depends on so many factors.
Yeah.
But probate's really interesting for investors because you find that these deals can have really big equity in them, right? But they can be complicated. But the idea of what I'm able to do on my side is break them down so we can solve these puzzles easily in a simple, streamlined way.
Love it.
To help get them through these problems, right?
Well, and that's something that's really important. So here locally, we have a probate attorney that we work with on all of these situations because a lot of times people are in a probate, but they don't have an attorney.
Right.
So they're trying to figure this all out. And so we refer them over to our attorney. Our attorney, and I don't know how you run your business, but our attorney will get paid once the deal closes, right? Because a lot of the times the family doesn't have, a nest egg saved up to be able to hire an attorney and get this all done. That's why they didn't do it in the first place, right? So they do it on the back end when it gets sold, and it works out really, really well. And we're working now. It's another layer of service that we provide to our property owners because they're kind of like floating in the middle of the ocean, not knowing what to do, what paperwork, what courts to go to, how to make sure that they get the title right and it doesn't take years to do it. So we refer them over to our probate attorney and then they take care of the rest. I mean, is that typically what you're running into?
You're going to love what I do.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
It's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? So I'll wait until the close to get paid.
Right.
Even if it's 2 probates, 6 probates, 1 probate, I know. And we could talk about stories about how just waited on one with 6 probates. It was madly complicated.
Yeah.
But the best part is that those are the people that don't have the money to pay for that kind of issue, right? So overcoming that part alone helps them tremendously. Also doing them timely is huge. So they don't know where to go. They don't know how to do it. They think that, it's overly complicated, but that's when you put them with the right people in the right place, that's when things can really take off.
Right. So is it pretty common as a probate attorney throughout the country that a lot of probate attorneys will offer this? They don't need to necessarily get paid up front from the family. They'll work with them and get them through the process. Is that normal? Because what I'm trying to do here is I'm in Phoenix, you're in Florida. Our audience is everywhere.
Right.
So and I want the point of this podcast is for people to have a probate attorney on their team. Right? And what things to ask them, what things to say, how to bring the probate attorney's business in exchange. Potentially, there's some times that probate attorneys give you the business back when they run into situations where people have properties that they want to sell, right?
You never know.
It's a win-win reciprocal relationship. So if somebody's out in Atlanta or Dallas and they want to talk to a probate attorney, who should they be looking for? How do they find somebody that's like you that's going to do all this front-loaded work, get paid on the back end, and really help the distressed property owners that we're working with? Because these people don't have a huge budget.
It's a great question
Yeah.
because it took a couple years for me to formulate this answer, right? And I was just on Pace's Sub 2 community group, and everybody was watching, and a lot of people asked that question. And the best thing I came up with, so go outside of Florida, go outside of Arizona, all the other states, is the first thing you're thinking is, find a probate attorney that works with investors, right? So when you approach that probate attorney, you're saying, hey man, do you work with investors? What's the percentage, right?
Yeah.
Are you working 70% or 30% with investors? If you're hearing, 70%, that's maybe where you're gearing things towards, right?
Okay.
So the 30%, maybe they don't do it, right? How many of them work with investors, right? So that's the key. Probate and investors. How much of their business is probate is you got to find a high percentage, and how much do they work with investors?
Right.
Also, title. Do they get into all the title world? Because you want to find a probate attorney that thinks ahead, that's proactive, right? So my style is I think about it all the way at the end. How do we close the deal?
Right.
Right? You don't think about it, oh, we're just moving over title. Wait, oh, we have a whole problem here. How's this deal going to close? So
Sure.
you want to ask these questions about their mindset too. Are they going to close that deal? And if you find that
The owner's mindset
no
or the investor's mindset?
the attorney, like if you're
Oh,
looking
okay.
if you're looking for the attorney
Got
out of
it.
state, what do they do? What are they thinking to close the deal? Sellers, they just want to, at the end of the day, they want to unload this, get the money, and close the deal.
Yep.
Investors want to make sure they get a really solid price, and if they're going to do the rehab, the numbers make sense.
Yep.
When you're finding another attorney out of state is the hardest thing. Like I'll get people saying, like, where do we find an Al Nicoletti out of the state of Florida? And I'm
Right.
like, I really don't know where that is, because I'll wait till closing to get paid. The buyers can pay for the sellers on their behalf if they allow it.
Sure.
And I work with so many investors. I understand the title world. I know how to read title commitments. And that's what you're looking for. Somebody that's got the drive,
Yeah.
that doesn't just dabble in probate, that does probate.
Yeah, but everybody listening to this, Al, is like, how do I get leads from a probate attorney, right? And I'm gonna open this up because we give a lot of the property owners that we work with, we bring to the probate attorney. We bring him business.
Right.
You know what I mean? And he
Right.
does a great job,
Right.
and we get him closed, and it's phenomenal. And that's when we started getting referrals of, hey, would you guys want to put an offer in on this? Not saying that they'll take it, but I'm just reaching out to you to be able to do that. I wouldn't have had that opportunity unless I would have built that relationship by bringing business to the attorney first. How important is that to you? Right? That these investors are starting the relationship by bringing you business for you to reciprocate.
Two things are going through my head.
Yes.
Relationships
Yes.
and sources.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of attorneys know where those sources are because they see it on a daily basis, right? So if you're thinking leads and where they're coming from, find out where they're coming from, like tax delinquents, pre-foreclosures, maybe the way that the property appraiser changes the designation of the name when a death certificate's recorded.
Yeah.
Attorneys know those kinds of things. So the relationship and the sources kind of play hand in hand, because if you have the mindset that you're going to go to an attorney and say, hey, do you have any leads? We'll help you close them. You got to frame it in a different way of, how do we build that trust and relationship with that person over time? It's not an overnight thing, but they play hand in hand because we know where things are, right? The tax deeds, one of the best calls to action in Florida, right? You can't do a motion to cancel tax deed. You got to pay the taxes off in order to get it off the auction block. And how can you get that puzzle solved before it hits the auction block? And now it goes for way more, and you're not going to buy it at the tax deed auction.
Right.
So how do you know that that's a great lead? Where do you go? Tax certificates. How do you know, where do you find that in the clerk of the courts, right? A lot of people, so I don't know how it is in Arizona, but in Florida, public records are all over the place. You can pull tons of public records, right? Some states are not like that.
There are non-disclosure states, and then there's disclosure states, and the disclosure states are much easier to get this information.
Yeah, I mean, but you can pull so many documents that can show either distress, like the pre-foreclosures.
we have PropStream, we have batch leads.
Right.
I like batch leads in the non-disclosure states. They do a really good job, but PropStream in the disclosure states, they go in, they scrape for the probates, they scrape for the pre-foreclosures, they do all of that heavy lifting. So our job as real estate investors is to go and talk to the distressed property owner. And when we run across, we see the probates coming in, right? Because it's a court, it's going through the courts. It's somebody passed away, they don't have a will, and they're going to be transferring it through a court action. That shows up. We know how to reach out to them. It's just when we reach out to them, oftentimes they don't have attorneys. And so what we do is we match up the people that we're talking to with the attorney that we're working with, and that's how we build the attorney makes it so much smoother for this process, which is great for us. But on the flip side, building that relationship with that attorney so that they start giving us opportunities of people that already hired them that have properties and bringing it to us to close those deals.
Right. No, those are great possibilities, right? That can happen, especially with lawyers that have been in the business for 10, 20, 30 years, right? They've been in that community for so long. They're just picking up organic leads. Doesn't happen for every attorney, but that can happen as well. But I think it's the relationship building, right? That's where it comes, and it's not just a one-time thing. It's keeping in touch with them. I've heard a lot of people talk about like gift baskets and stuff, and I think it's more about
what do you like? What charms you?
I love the relationship. Sure. I love connecting, breaking bread, having dinner.
So somebody could just call you up and get through the stiff arm of your orbiting satellite, which is your assistant or your whoever's answering your calls, and then get right to you and just start building a relationship.
So building relationships, that's the best part, right? Yeah. You don't have to get through the assistant for that.
Yeah.
In my world, I work on so many deals that are already under contract, already picked up with the investors. But the relationship part, that's where people can reach out to me. Yeah. Let's talk. Let's figure out how I can help you and give back and educate you on how to really get through these things so you can learn more about it instead of passing off these deals.
So what should... Give us some very specific, a couple questions, maybe 2 or 3 questions that would be good. Somebody is in Boise, Idaho. They want to build a relationship with a probate attorney for the people that they're talking to, because people are going through the probate process without an attorney. They need help, right? So they want to build a relationship with somebody that can help them, but also see if there's some opportunity for some reciprocation on getting those referrals as well. So what would be a good, how do you open up that conversation with somebody that you've never talked to? A lot of times, people are working on their first, second, 10th deal, but they don't have a lot of reps speaking with an attorney. Attorneys, notoriously, people are very intimidated to call up and just have a conversation with an attorney until you do and realize they're human, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So how do you open up, how do you break the ice with an attorney and make sure that they're the right attorney to bring your leads to and to get some leads from?
Yeah, so I think it really goes to what do they do in their practice. Learn more about what they do, right? Ask them what do they see on a daily basis. Lawyers love telling stories about like the things that they go through. Yeah. So really finding out like what do they do in their business? What are they practicing the most? What are they seeing as a hot market lately? Those are the things that drill down and get to the relationship building and finding out, what are their needs? Are they looking for any types of other auxiliary services? Are they looking for lenders? Are they looking for other buyers? Maybe they have a title company.
I love that you said auxiliary services, because that's a cheat code. Because listen, Al, if you need anybody to clear out that house, if you need anybody that needs to remove any kind of pests, if you need it boarded up, if you need cars removed and donated, whatever you need, you reach out to me. I'll take care of it. Right. That's the conversation that you have with the probate attorney. Then you're the go-to person, and then all of a sudden, when there is an opportunity for an ugly house, because that's the world that we live in, Al. Right? Ugly houses and big checks. When there's an ugly house coming from a probate attorney, you get a first shot at giving them an offer on it.
Yeah, build that network around you,
Yep.
right? That's really key. Build the, who the lenders are, who the buyers are, who the title people are. Build that appraisers. You never know when you're going to need to get them involved too.
Sure.
So build that around. You never know who people need. But then drilling it down more is keeping in communication and contact. I think a lot of the people that know me, they know I follow up a lot. I love that follow up and keeping in touch thing, because it's not that one time thing. Find out what are they doing, how are things going. Those are the key things to building relationships. It's not just with attorneys, it's really with anybody in particular.
So if somebody passes away, just switching tracks a little bit here. So most people, would you say statistically, have a will, have something, have a trust, have something that says this is what's going to happen to my stuff, to my personal property and to this real property when the time comes?
The last stat I heard
Yes.
was 95% of people do not have wills or estate
Do
plans.
not?
Do not.
95% of people.
That was the last stat I heard.
Listen to me, and I'm looking right into the camera. I'm going to break the third wall here for a second here, or fourth, or whatever it is. Listen, if you do not have this, you need to get this set up. Do not be in the 95%. Make sure that you have this. I know that this is probably taking business from you eventually. I'm sorry, Al. But listen, we're real estate investors. You need to understand what is required. Make sure that you talk to a really good wealth planning or estate planning attorney and get that set up. But for the most part, 95% of people don't.
A lot. Yeah. That's the last I heard. So here's the thing. A lot of people, here's what's interesting. With investors, they'll see me do a presentation on probate,
Right.
and it's interesting. They'll want to know how to get into probate, but then I'll get the line that they'll say, well, hold on a second. How do we avoid this? How do we not go through this? How do I make sure my family doesn't go through this? And a lot of people, when it comes to real estate, they like the ladybird deeds. They have that in Florida.
What is a ladybird deed?
A ladybird deed
I've never heard of that in my life.
So it's interesting. It's a retitling. It's doing a brand new deed from your name to your name only for your life. But you still retain the interest. You still keep the 100% interest, and you can sell it, whatever you want to do during your life.
Got it.
But upon death, it transfers to who you name as the remainderman.
Is ladybird deeds throughout the United States, or is this just a Florida thing?
Florida thing, but I think they also have it in North Carolina. You have to check on that.
Okay.
But I think it's there too. It's
I think
interesting.
it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I don't know why it wouldn't be adopted in more states.
A lot of
Interesting.
people love it.
Yeah. So ladybird deeds. Okay, so that's how you do. By the way, Al, if people are interested, they want to connect, they're in Florida. Are you all of Florida?
All Florida.
All Florida.
All Florida.
So if you're in Florida, guys, and we have a lot of audience members in Florida, how do people get a hold of you?
So they can give me a call. My phone number is 904.
You're going to give out your... Okay. Go ahead. Yep. Go ahead. 904.
999 0053.
Okay.
And the best part about it is that they can find me on Facebook, all social media, Instagram, at Attorney Nicoletti. They can find me on iTunes and Spotify because I have my show there, and on YouTube where I drop all my videos and content.
At Attorney and your last name.
Nicoletti.
Nicoletti. And we'll put that in the show notes. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so 95% of people are going to be going through the probate process. And what happens then? I mean, so do most people hire attorneys?
Yeah, they usually do that because, I mean, it can get complicated, right? If you have a situation where you think it's just one and then you pull title to that because you go to the title company and they say there's 6, what are you going to do then, right? But you really want the deal because you locked it up for $10,000 for, that little lot of land, but you can flip it for a lot more than that. How do you get through that? So sellers don't want to handle going through that process. And if you don't do it right, too, it messes up the process. It'll slow it down because, like in Florida with some counties, there's some documents that are needed to get things moving, and if you don't fill them out or don't do it correctly, it stalls the whole process.
And that's interesting because I want to talk about timeline here. We have a saying on the podcast that time kills all deals. And that's why, when I get the question on my live shows or just in my DMs or whatever about probate, it's like, do I lock it up at the start of probate, in the middle of it, or should I wait until there's like an end in sight, right? Because if the risk is, Al, if you lock it up now, could it take 6 months to get it through and now the deed's transferred and they can actually close on the property and sell it, right? And if you're in there 6 months, by that time, they're going to get 1,000 direct mail pieces. They're going to get hundreds of calls. They're going to get texts. They're going to get real estate agents reaching out to them. They're going to get their neighbor down the street that's asking them, what are they doing? And they're like, oh, I sold the property, but it doesn't close until here, and then all of a sudden things get real wiggly in a 6-month escrow.
Right.
There's a lot of pitfalls in that 6 months that could prevent that deal from getting done, even though you have a signed contract, right? So how long is the typical probate?
Okay, so I'm going to blow your mind when it comes to timing,
Okay.
right? Because you talked about a lot of things there. Talked about locking it up to timing to because of the timing, now there's other people that can get and interfere, right? So let's talk about timing. I've blown people's minds when I can tell you I do probates in like 4 to 6 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, I could do probates like that fast.
How do you get it through the courts?
I get all the paperwork together, I file it, I hustle, I get it done.
Got it.
Yeah.
You can shorten the timeline if your attorney's hustling.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's the other thing. A lot of attorneys don't hustle. So that's why these things take 6 months, 9 months. So if I'm in a room of people, I always ask that question. I'll say, how many of you think that probate takes 9 months? So many people raise their hands. Exactly. Right? Or 2 years. I see people still raise their hands. Some people shout 4 years. And I'm like, that's insane. Right? Yeah. But then I come in and it's like, Jacksonville's like 4 to 6 weeks. I'll do things in like Ocala in 2 to 3 months. I'll do things like in 1 month and 2 months in different counties. Volusia County, like 2 to 4 weeks. That's the difference when you get somebody that hustles, that knows what they're doing and has a different mindset. Yeah,
but is that just in Florida because there's a lot of older people and they just, the courts are a lot faster because there's more volume?
Ask some other investors how long their probates have taken in Florida.
Yeah.
I guarantee
it's longer.
It's a mindset thing, right? Now, when you talk about locking up the contract, a lot of people ask that. They'll say, can we lock up the contract beforehand or do we have to wait until after? And it's a really interesting question because it can get gray on things with enforceability. You never know, but get them under contract right away.
Okay.
Why not?
Yeah.
Get everything at the upfront, right? So that you can set terms and maybe how long to close. Just leave it open-ended.
Right.
See, if I'm not on the file, then I don't know how long that kind of thing takes. So if you leave it open for 6-month close, I mean, at least you're kind of open there. The contract's not going to fall through.
Yeah.
But those things can get locked up.
Well, I think the issue we run into as investors, Al, is we go, are we talking to the right person? Is this the actual decision maker? So how do we know who the personal representative is going to be, who's going to be the one that actually is capable of signing a valid, purchase agreement?
So you start at 2 concepts.
Yep.
Will or no will.
Yep.
If there's a will, find out where it is and who's named in it because the will will actually say who's getting what or what gets what. Maybe it's going to a trust, right? But if there is no will, this is where you can start with the basic questions because you're really going to start like this probably in any state, but in Florida, you'll start with spouse. So where's that surviving spouse? Because that's huge decision maker.
Okay.
And if not then, children. Right. Or if somebody died after them, grandchildren.
Right.
So go down the basic lineage line. That's the start. Because I tell people, if you're starting at second cousin removed, you're at the wrong people.
Sure.
Right? Like from the get-go. Like you never know. But you start there, and then if not them, you go up to parents. I have a whole thing that I do in a presentation that I help investors remember where do you go. But starting at spouse, kids, grandkids, parents, grandparents, out to brothers and sisters, nieces, nephews, none of those aunts and uncles. There's a line that you can follow that helps you remember, do we have the right people? If we're at nieces and nephews and there's a spouse, you're talking to the wrong people.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah.
Now, because when we get a list, it usually has the personal representative on. When does that get determined?
So not every deal may have to go through a personal representative.
Okay.
Maybe the list is stating a personal representative.
I mean, what is it state by state? Is it national wide to know who's going to actually inherit the property or have the rights to sell the property?
That's the key.
Right.
So it depends on a classification of the property, right?
Yeah.
So if it's the primary residence
Okay.
of the deceased, that's where the true heirs are going to have to be the ones that sign the deeds and sign the contract.
Is it the firstborn? Is it the secondborn?
All children ever.
So all children have the rights.
Right.
So if they have, if this couple passes away, and there's 3 children, all 3 have equal shares in that property.
Yes, no will, all 3 children
Wow.
ever.
So
Yes.
that's where we go into the issues.
Yes.
Of 2 want to sell, 1 doesn't,
Right.
or 2 want that a certain price, the other one wants higher,
or
one wants to live in the property and the other 2 want to sell it.
Brent,
Right?
I got stories for days, man. So let me tell you this story, and it's a new slide on my PowerPoint.
Okay.
It's called the Checkmate. So there was a deal where there were 6 kids ever, right? Mom dies, 6 kids ever. 5 of them signed the contract with the investor. The 6th one was a holdout, and he was like, "Oh, we can get either so much more. Or I don't want to sell." So at the time I was like, "Ugh, okay, so we're gonna have to do probate, and there's something called partition where that's a separate thing where they force a sale and they can get his interest out." Yeah, we could go through so many things, but this is where the creativity came in, right? So a couple days goes by, and I wanted to know more about this 6-1 and the type of classification of that property. So I talked to the client seller, and I was like, "Let me ask you something. Did mom live and reside there? Because if she did, yeah, you're gonna need them on. Then we're gonna have to talk about partition. But if they did not live and reside there when she died, maybe there's a mechanism around it." So she was like, "Oh, no. Mom moved out before death."
Okay.
I said, "Really?" She said, "Yeah." And I was like, "So hold on a second. We have a way to get around him, and we can do some kind of loop and force the move through the probate." She said, "Really?" I said, "Go for it. Tell him." So they told him. A day later, they come back and call me and go, "He's signing the contract. We were going to get completely around him. He's ready to go."
Yeah.
And it's because of that experience on other deals that we've been through. We think through, what's the flip side? What's the alternative?
Sure.
And you know what? It's under contract. We're probably closing in like 2 weeks.
Awesome. And how long of a process, start to finish, is that going to be?
That's probably about 4 weeks.
Wow. Incredible. That's so I've never heard it that fast. That's incredible.
That's what I do.
That's bananas. When somebody, the other conversation that we have typically with a lot of these probate sellers is they want to know what the cost is. You know, what is the total cost of getting it done? Because then it helps them determine their net on what they're going to get from it. Because that's really what they care about, right?
Right.
How much of the pie is going to be left over
Right.
for us to split amongst the 6 kids or the 3 kids or the 2 or the 1 or
Yeah.
whatever. So what is a typical probate? Kind of give me a range on what that typically costs and what we can go armed with on these appointments and just say, "Hey, listen, I think the best approach, instead of trying to figure out the probate process, I think that you should, go with Al. If you're in Florida, go with whoever in a different market, and they're going to make it a lot easier. It's going to cost you this amount." What should we say there?
So many things to think about there. The first thing that you have to think about is how complicated is it, right? So if you find the probate attorney that can break down the puzzle and have that seller reach out and say, "Hey, this is the puzzle. They post deceased. We got 2 to 3 probates." Then we can start factoring in how much that's going to be, so then the investor can go back and factor that into their contract.
Okay.
So I would say on a first level, it's how do we solve that puzzle and what's that look like?
Right.
The other thing is how much typically per probate on a straightforward streamline, 4 kids, 3 kids, you can be looking at $2,500 to $3,000 per probate. Now, when you get the wackadoodles that we were about to do with the 6 holdout, and if he still held out, and we had to overcome those kind of things. Now you're talking
It drags on.
Yeah, well, not necessarily. it may just be more expensive. There's still a way to get that thing through.
That's what I mean.
I'd show you some crazy
the cost
things.
drags
man.
on.
Yeah.
No. Well, so 3,000. 3,000 is probably a
Per
good
probate?
ballpark.
Yeah.
And, I mean, unless it gets, and you can have that conversation for everybody out there listening and watching. Have that conversation that says, it's probably going to be 3,000. But if your brother isn't involved, like you guys are going to get less. Like help your siblings understand that you're going to get less at the end of this if it costs more for the attorney to get this all unraveled. So if everybody plays ball, everybody gets more money.
Right.
That's the conversation. If not, then you're going to have to give up some equity in this property. You're going to have to give up some net amount that you're going to make on this, and you're going to have to pay the attorney to put in the work to get this figured out and get this straightened out and done.
This is a fantastic conversation because these are a lot of the things that a lot of investors are thinking. Now, here's the best part. If the lawyers are able to get the money from the investor and the investor pays, the investor can factor that into their deals. And then the sellers are thinking, well, wait a second, it's not coming from our end. Hey, we're going to get a really good spread here. Meanwhile, they've already factored that in on the deal.
Yeah.
So that's the nice end. If you already know how many probates, how much are you going to be in for, and then you factor it in ahead of time, boom, done.
Listen, guys, I can give you $110,000 for your house, and I'm going to pay for the probate attorney to get this done and closed. You guys don't have to pay anything. I'll pay for it. Not a problem. Will you take this price? Yes, great. Boom, sign here. Now you're off and running.
That's the
which
approach.
a lot of people. It's an extra added benefit to working with you as the investor, right?
Right.
And they're getting taken care of, not only to work with you to get the contract signed, but to keep them in the deal during the process. Because what other investor is going to pay for the attorney to do the work? They're going to have two attorneys doing the work in the same thing? No. They're going to stay with that one attorney. They're going to get it to the close. Yeah. It's a nice way to anchor in to that deal.
Yeah.
Right?
And yeah, exactly. And then some of these other buyers may come along and be like, oh, no, we'll handle that probate. Well, when it's super complicated, good luck if it's that complicated, right? So those are some other mechanisms and maneuvers that, locking it up under contract, paying for the probate, telling them, no, we got a team around us. That's the big thing too. The confidence in we work with the best people around us, title, attorney, lenders. We work with the best. Don't worry, we got this.
We got you covered.
Yeah, making it simple, easy, understandable. It's not about pulling out a pamphlet and showing people, it's going to be 3 months and 9 months. Forget that stuff, right? Forget the pamphlets. Forget it. Talk to them, right? That's the idea.
Yeah, I love it. And I want to kind of put a bow on this conversation here as we're starting to wrap up, because I think it's really important. I think a lot of people get intimidated having conversations with people that are going through such a loss. It's a very emotional time. It's a time where new people coming into your life is different. It just feels different when you've lost somebody and then somebody else is entering your life to try to help you out during a situation. What's the best way to communicate? What's the best way to communicate to the heirs that are going through this process? What kind of approach should be had? I mean, you're having these conversations every single day. Right?
Right.
So how do you make it so that they understand that they're taken care of?
I think it's the way that you approach it with the confidence of, I've been there, I've done many of these before, I've seen so many different things. Believe you me,
my attorney has.
Yeah, or the attorney has. They have, or
if
maybe
you've never done a deal, then you can leverage your attorney's experience. Right?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
So the investor, maybe they've been through something personally in their family too that they can relate to, right? So you could take the guard off, and you can frame it from a, not just a transactional part, but more of like a friend, like an empathy part, right? To talk to them about, look, I get it, been there, I've had that situation before. But on a transactional front, it's, we got this. We can really get you through this, and it's getting their mind off of it, right? If you keep probate transactional and you stay away from the emotion, that's where the probate's going to go on a roll, and it's going to be streamlined from there.
Yep. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. And it's really, having some confidence or borrowing confidence from your attorney, I think, is very important there. But it's also we're out there to serve these sellers. We're out there to help them get through this process with as much speed and convenience as possible. You know what I mean? And in our experience with probate, with as much like real human connection as possible.
Right.
You really have to understand what people are going through here. You got to be very your empathy has to be off the charts. And if you go with that tone and have expertise to help them actually get it done and make it smooth, it works out for everybody.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, make it easy.
Give them your number one more time. Anybody in Florida that needs a probate attorney, Al Nicoletti, right here. What is it?
904-999-0053. Check me out on all the social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube under Al Nicoletti, iTunes and Spotify. I think you Google Play now too.
Sure.
So all those mediums, that's the best way to find me. I'm out there doing tons of videos and content, educating all the investors, all the real estate professionals all the time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Al,
Brent,
thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah, man.
I mean, I think we covered pretty much every question that I've ever had about probate, and you crushed it. So thank you so much.
No, thank you.
And for everybody out there, if you're interested in joining the most proactive group in real estate investing, it is the TTP coaching program, the TTP family. Go to wholesalinginc.com/TTP. That's wholesalinginc.com/TTP. Check out what it's all about. If it feels good in your gut, sign up for a call. I look forward to working with you personally. And with that, I will sign off, as I always do, encouraging you to go out there and talk to people. Till next time, love you guys. See ya.